Lloyd McClendon, manager of the Mariners, joins us now here on the set on MLB Now. Lloyd, it's good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, you guys have been active. I see. What do you thought? Now, we talk about where you guys are on the win curve, meaning you are right there, 87 wins. You had Nelson Cruz, J. Happ. Your thoughts on your ball club as it's currently constructed?
Well, I mean, obviously we've made some improvements. You know, everybody knows we were challenged from an offensive standpoint last year, and to go out and get Nelson Cruz, I think it's huge for us. You know, it should really bolster our offense to the point where we'll be very competitive.
What did you think of him as a player when you'd seen him with Baltimore and then before that with Texas?
Well, you know, I've always thought of him as a winner. You know, I thought of him as a guy that showed up every day. He got big hits in big situations, you know, with the game on the line. And those are the type of players that any manager would want.
Lloyd, I wonder, you finish one game behind Kansas City. Kansas City ends up going to Game 7 of the World Series. It's one game. How much have you thought about that one game difference since the season ended?
On a scale of 1 to 10, probably 20. I mean, you know, listen, it was tough, you know, sitting there watching the playoffs and watching Kansas City and Oakland go at it, and, you know, knowing that we played real well against both of those clubs. And listen, we were a team that was built for the playoffs, and we probably weren't built for the regular season, because we didn't have that offense. But I think if we'd have got in, it would have been very, very scary.
Well, I wonder, do you now use that as motivation with your team about playing the 162 games, how razor thin it could be between missing the playoffs and getting a parade?
Well, you know, that's exactly what I did. I mean, my last speech to my club before they packed their bags to leave was, you know, remember this day and remember this feeling, because it's not a good feeling. And every game counts. And, you know, you can say what if, it coulda, woulda, but, you know, the fact is we were who we were. And we were an 87-win ball club, and we came up a little short.
You know, when you think about it, last year at this time, we're talking about Robinson Cano. How much fun was it watching him for 162 games this year?
Well, Robbie is a tremendous pro. I mean, what he brought to the table, and a lot of the stuff that he brought to the table, you didn't see, you know. It was behind the scenes, you know, taking guys to the video room and talking about the scouting report and how you prepare, and it was really a pleasure to watch.
Now, how can we hear stories like that? This is something we could talk about quite a bit. We didn't hear about what a great guy he was off the field. Not that he was a bad guy, but it was like just all this noise, and then I heard nothing but great things about off the field and leadership and all that stuff once he got to you. So this narrative, is this mostly nonsense, or is it a change of venue where he can have ownership?
Well, I mean, I'm probably not qualified to answer that. I mean, I wasn't in New York. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. I can talk about what he was for the Seattle Mariners, and that was a complete player. I mean, he was a leader in the locker room. He was a leader on the field. He got big hits for us. He did everything and probably a little bit more than I expected.
You know, sometimes I think for players, you are in the shadow of greats, and then all of a sudden you're the great. So I think that's what happened to Cano with you guys. Tell me about Michael Zunino. It's a position you know quite well. I was so impressed watching him last year. He's got legendary Lloyd, Little League World Series pop.
Well, listen, Michael, yeah, and I probably rode Michael probably harder than any other player on my ball club, because I expected a lot of it out of him, particularly with running our pitching staff. And there were a lot of pressures on him from that end. But I think Michael's got a chance to be an all-star catcher in the very near future. He's learning the positions. You know, if you think about this kid had probably 400 at-bats before he got to the big leagues. It's just astronomical to think that he could come and hit 20-plus home runs in the big leagues and handle the staff. And by the way, we probably have the most difficult pitching staff in baseball to handle, because we got some repertoire, you know, with that starting rotation.
Another deal that was made in the offseason is your third base spot's locked up for a long time. I think people who are paying attention know how good Kyle Seager is. You tell us from your vantage point what type of player he is.
Well, Seager's a guy that I think is going to get better and better. I mean, obviously, you know, he had an MVP type of year for us. Defensively won a Gold Glove, and deservingly so. I think the power numbers will continue to increase. The one thing I challenged him with, and I think he did a good job of it, is, you know, these shifts. When teams shift you, they're telling you you're not good enough to hit the ball the other way. And I think he took it to heart, and you saw down the stretch, he started to drive the ball the other way, and teams started to move their field back around a little bit. So I think in the end, that's going to make him even a better player.
I wonder why we haven't seen more of that, Lloyd. Is that the next wave of pros saying, okay, I cannot accept everyone loading into my power spot. Now I've got to start doing that?
Well, I think you got to recognize your talent. You know, my old skipper told me the most important thing you can learn about your players is to know them and know what they're capable of doing. And I just believe that this guy was capable of hitting the ball the other way and hitting the ball the other way with power. So I think that's a part of his game that he's just now starting to uncover. And it's going to make him real dangerous when he can go foul line to foul line.
Yeah, look, that's the strategy and the counter strategy is always fascinating. Well, if Dan Plesac were here, we'd be rolling out your Little League highlights, but we can let you go without it this time. I think you must have scared Dan when he was only 6'5" and was 12 years old and throwing 95.
You know, I saw Dan earlier today, and I reminded him that I own him. So,
Lloyd, thanks for jumping by.